Israel responded furiously to the recent EU move to label products in the settlements, from the settlements. But beyond the condemnation, is there anything in practical terms that we can do to fight or prevent the decision? And how will this decision impact Israel's relationship with the EU going forward?
Well, I think condemnation is very important. You know, when somebody does something outrageous, you say it. You don't say, oh, well, okay, let it pass. It's outrageous. It should be said so. It's outrageous, first of all, because it's unfair. It's unfair to, again, to blame the victim. It's unfair because it is skipped the double standard. It's not even a triple standard. I mean, there are 200 territorial conflicts raging in the world, and the EU chooses to label products from Jewish products from the West Bank. You know how many West Banks there are in the world? And in far different circumstances, much more grievous circumstances, this is what they choose to do. So it's obviously singling out, and they'll jump in hoops and try to explain to you why this is different. Come on. You can say anything, but the truth is evident. It's singling out Israel without a common criteria, with a special criteria for the Jewish state. They say it's because of their frustration that the conflict is not solved. Their frustration? We're 100 years here fighting for our lives against this Palestinian rejection. Believe me, we're frustrated. Yeah. Maybe we should never mind. I mean, this is absolutely absurd. It's particularly absurd, but I think it's morally abhorrent too. It's morally abhorrent because on the soil of Europe, within living memory, Jewish products were labeled. Jewish stores were labeled. And I'd expect, with all the frustration, for Europe not to adopt this heinous act which has such horrible historical overtones. In practical terms, it won't affect our economy. It's a minuscule part of our exports. Israel's economy is very strong. You know, we're opening markets to small countries in Asia, Japan, China, India, in a big way. And of course, in Latin America too. I should add Africa because they're all coming back and they say, come back Israel, come back Israel. So I think there's a diversification of our economy. It's happening anyway. It's accelerating because of this. And I don't think that our economy is going to be hurt. I think, if anything, Palestinian employment, the Palestinian economy will be somewhat hurt by this, because for them, any employment or any effect on employment is much more powerful and more significant than on us. But what I find objectionable here is the triple standard applied to Israel, the singling out of Israel, the moral overtones. I think the EU bureaucracy has crossed the line here, to put it mildly. Crossed the line.
We just have a few more minutes. Turkey's President Erdogan just consolidated his hold on power there. While he's in office, have you written off ties with Turkey, or do you see any chance at all of rescuing any kind of a relationship with Ankara?
Your audience may not be aware of the fact that trade with Turkey, I think, is at an all-time high. Some tourism is resumed. I'd say the economic relations actually are surprisingly strong because markets have a way to operate on their own, which is also related to the previous question. You know, many countries will not participate in a boycott, even symbolic, of Israel, because they don't want to boycott themselves. They need from Israel typically three things: Israeli technology, Israeli technology, and Israeli technology. And they're not about to walk away from it. Eric Schmidt of Google told me that Israel is the most powerful global center of technology. And I said, Eric, you're overstating it. He said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm not. And just to give you an idea of our relative power, in 2014, Israel received 10% of the global investment in cybersecurity. That's a lot. That's 100 times our size in the world population. In 2015, that number changed. It's doubled. We received 20% of the world's global investment in cybersecurity. In cyber, we're punching 200 times above our weight. So maybe Mr. Schmidt had a point. And I think that this will be reflected in our economic prowess, in our ability to diversify our markets. That relates to the previous question, but also relates to this one. The forces of economics are working. So we have that relationship with Turkey. There is a question which Minister Steinitz, our energy minister, is dealing with, which is the question of the gas that, we're going to conclude a gas deal very soon, as you know. Are you aware of this? Yeah. And contrary to the protests, within a year or 2 years, people are going to look back and they say, how could we not do this? How could we protest against it? This will be tremendous for the Israeli people, for lowering our energy rates, for bringing in hundreds of billions of shekels to the Israeli coffers. 60% of any shekel is gone, of the gas revenues, goes to the Israeli people directly, not to the companies. It's huge. It's a tremendous boost for growth. There is the possibility of examining the possible cooperation with Turkey of this. So these are two issues. Third, the developments in Syria, and especially the possibility that Iran will gain a permanent foothold and a much more powerful foothold in Syria, is something that obviously concerns us, but I think also concerns Syria quite a bit. So, the Turks quite a bit. So, at least on the face of it, it looks like we could have common interests. Common interests don't always make for a workable policy. It's something that we'll examine, because we also have conflicting interests. And the most obvious conflicting interest is the fact that Hamas has been working in Syrian territory to actively foment terrorist attacks against Israel, actively direct terrorist attacks against Israel. And so we're examining this question. We're not fixated. We're looking at the changing scene and seeing how we can, as I said before, diversify our markets, establish new friendships, or rekindle old relationships, if possible. Whatever we're doing, we have our face, our gaze to the horizon, but our feet on the ground. Statesmanship requires that you're firmly connected to reality. Otherwise, you're in a balloon that loses contact with Earth. We don't lose contact with reality. We know we live in a tough neighborhood. We know that Zionism has been fighting against those who wish to uproot us from here for 100 years. We've been able to defend our country, establish its independence, develop it, seek peace and achieve peace with two of our neighbors, but we did not precondition at any time the rise of Zionism or the future of the Jewish state on the acceptance of our neighbors. We hope that that will happen, but we never made it a precondition. Otherwise, this state would not have been founded. Otherwise, this state would not exist. The most important thing is to solidify our country, to make it richer, stronger, more powerful. Soon there will be 10 million Israelis with $500 billion GDP. That's a good way to move into this first half of this century. Thank you.
Thank you.